You walk into your nan's front room. The air is thick with the inescapable smell of stale embassy filter tips and the terrifying hiss of a freestanding paraffin heater that looks like it could tip over at any second. There's a chipped, floral mug of boiling hot tea resting precariously on the uneven arm of a highly flammable, mustard-colored Dralon sofa. You sit down, the intense static electricity instantly shocks the back of your leg, and your mum yells from the kitchen not to touch the glowing orange bars of the electric fire. You sit back, surrounded by heavy, dark wood furniture, and listen to the ticking of a grandfather clock. It was a completely different world back then, not just culturally, but financially. In the 1970s, the average British house cost just £13,650, a pint of milk was 15p, and a loaf of bread was only 26p. Life was cheaper, but it was also a lot more dangerous. Today, health and safety govern absolutely every single inch of our homes. We have smart temperature controls that you can adjust from your mobile phone, child-proof magnetic locks on every kitchen cupboard, and hypersensitive smoke alarms hardwired into every ceiling. But back in the 70s? Our houses were unregulated, hazardous obstacle courses. We lived in permanently damp homes with ice forming on the inside of the windows in winter, surrounded by toxic paint, with killer smog right outside our drafty, single-glazed frames. Today we are looking at 15 completely normal things every British family had in their house that would probably get you arrested or at least heavily fined by today's standards. Let's see exactly how many of these household hazards you managed to survive. 1. The lethal chip pan. If your house was anything like mine, Friday night meant one thing: chips. But we didn't get them from a modern, digitally controlled, sleek air fryer that uses half a teaspoon of olive oil and turns itself off. Oh no! We used a dented, heavy aluminum chip pan filled to the absolute brim with boiling animal fat or blocks of solid Trex. Leaving it unattended on a roaring, naked gas flame was a weekly game of domestic roulette. The smell of hot grease would permanently permeate the floral curtains and your school uniform for days. We didn't have fire blankets or sophisticated foam extinguishers. If it caught fire, you just threw a damp tea towel over it and prayed. If you tried to use one of these bubbling cauldrons in a modern flat today, the smoke alarms would trigger a full evacuation before the potatoes even hit the oil. 2. Asbestos everything. Today, finding even a microscopic trace of asbestos in a building means a team of men in hazmat suits shut down your entire street, wrap the house in thick plastic, and charge you a fortune for specialized disposal. In the 70s? Your dad cheerfully built the entire garage roof out of cheap, corrugated asbestos sheets. We played underneath it, we scraped our knees against it, and we probably inhaled a fair amount of it when it chipped. Inside the house, your mum confidently rested her scorching hot iron on a pure asbestos heat pad without a second thought. It was marketed as a space-age, miracle fireproof material, and we treated it like just another bit of harmless household DIY. We were completely surrounded by the stuff, utterly oblivious to the lethal danger it posed. 3. Secondhand smoke as air freshener. You didn't just smoke in your house in the 1970s, you smoked absolutely everywhere. The air inside a typical British living room was permanently stained with a thick blue haze. Your parents smoked in the Ford Cortina with the windows rolled up tight to keep the British rain out, leaving you coughing in the back seat. Even your local doctor would be casually puffing on a cigarette while writing out your prescription for a chest infection. Every room had a heavy glass ashtray, including the bathroom. The ceilings slowly turned a distinct, sticky shade of nicotine yellow, a color that simply doesn't exist in modern homes. Try lighting up in a modern GP's waiting room or a pub today and see how fast you find yourself in the back of a police van. The concept of passive smoking simply hadn't been invented yet. 4. The Goblin Teasmade. Waking up in the 70s wasn't done to the gentle marimba of a smartphone alarm. It meant being violently jolted awake by the hiss, gurgle, and spit of a goblin teasmade. It was essentially a ticking, mechanical cauldron of boiling water placed precariously just inches from your sleeping head. Modern bedside electronics have automatic shutoffs, cool touch plastic, and rigorous European safety testing. The teasmade just sat there in the dark, heavy ceramic teapot and all, daring you to blindly knock it over in your sleep while reaching for the lamp. If the scalding water didn't get you, the terrifying, industrial clatter of the mechanism kicking in at 6:30 a.m. certainly would. 5. flammable shag pile and Dralon. Your living room decor was a modern fire inspector's absolute worst nightmare. We had highly flammable, immensely thick shag pile carpets in questionable shades of burnt orange, mustard, or olive green. They perfectly matched those famously itchy, static charge Dralon sofas. Sitting down too fast generated enough static electricity to power a small village. One dropped cigarette ash, one rogue spark from the open coal fire, and the entire room would go up in a matter of seconds. Today, every piece of foam and fabric in your house has a rigorous fire-retardant safety label stitched into it by law. Back then, our living rooms were basically highly decorated kindling, and finding lost coins or pieces of Lego deep in the shag pile was an everyday archaeological dig. 6. Unregulated Breville toasty makers. Today's kitchen gadgets have strict safety limits, temperature controls, and cool touch handles. The original 1970s Breville toasted sandwich makers, however, were culinary weapons. They clamped down with immense mechanical pressure, sealing the edges of the bread to produce cheese and baked bean fillings hot enough to literally take the roof of your mouth off. The cheddar turned into a molten, bubbling lava that adhered to your gums. We didn't sue the manufacturer when we got third-degree burns. We just blew on it, gasped for air, and took another incredibly painful bite. And cleaning it? You spent hours frantically scraping burnt-on crusts off the supposedly non-stick Teflon plates with a blunt butter knife. 7. Unrestrained car journeys. Seatbelts in the back seat? We had literally never heard of them. Family holidays to the seaside meant piling 4 kids, an angry dog, and a picnic hamper into the back of a Ford Cortina, completely unrestrained. In the peak of summer, your bare legs would physically fuse to the boiling hot, sticky vinyl seats. If you were lucky, you got to sleep stretched out across the rear parcel shelf, baking in the sun through the back window. If Dad had to brake suddenly, you simply had to brace yourself against the front seat and hope for the best. Today, children are strapped into ISOFIX, side impact tested booster seats until they are practically teenagers. Driving with an unrestrained child today will land you massive fines and points on your license. 8. Sugar-heavy diets. Today, our foods have strict traffic light warning labels for sugar content, and the government has introduced a national sugar tax to protect our health. In the 70s, our diets were completely unmonitored and wonderfully, dangerously sweet. We'd eat massive bowls of butterscotch Angel Delight for tea, pour thick, syrupy evaporated milk straight from the tin onto tinned fruit, and happily consume fiercely sweet drinks like Ribena and Lucozade before their recipes were quietly altered for health reasons. We put massive, heaping spoonfuls of sugar in our tea from a ridiculously young age. It was a complete dental disaster waiting to happen, but we didn't care. It provided the cheap, high-calorie energy needed to play out in the freezing cold streets for hours. 9. Wood chip wallpaper. At some point, half the country collectively decided it was a fantastic idea to cover their perfectly good, albeit slightly uneven, walls in wood chip wallpaper. It was cheap, it hid a multitude of structural plastering sins, and it was absolutely everywhere. But it was an absolute nightmare to scrape off. Modern landlords would ban it immediately, mainly because removing it required industrial, highly toxic chemical strippers, rented steam machines that scalded your forearms, and entire weekends of sheer, unadulterated misery. Once painted over 3 or 4 times with thick gloss, it became an indestructible, bumpy shell that entirely defined the texture of 1970s interior design. 10. The serving hatch. We thought we were the absolute height of modern, middle-class sophistication by knocking a square hole in the wall between the kitchen and the living room. The serving hatch was a staple of 1970s domestic architecture. In reality, it achieved absolutely nothing of value, except allowing the pungent, lingering smells of boiled cabbage, liver, and onions to travel more easily into the lounge, closely followed by every single argument happening by the kitchen sink. Today, we obsess over massive open-plan living spaces and marble kitchen islands. But back then, sliding back those little wooden doors to proudly hand through a plate of Findus crispy pancakes felt like true luxury. 11. Feeding the electric meter. There were no direct debits, seamless online banking, or smart meters tracking your usage on a mobile app back then. If the electric meter ran out of coins, the whole house plunged into sudden, terrifying darkness without warning. You'd be fumbling around with a box of matches or a weak, heavy torch in a freezing, pitch-black hallway, frantically trying to jam a 50p piece into a cold metal box just to finish watching Morecambe and Wise or Top of the Pops. The absolute panic in the living room when the TV picture started to shrink into a tiny white dot in the center of the screen is a highly specific, communal stress that modern generations will simply never understand. 12. Lead paint on toys. Today, children's toys are manufactured from BPA-free, food-grade silicone and carry rigorous European CE safety marks before they are allowed anywhere near a child. Our toys were heavy, die-cast metal dinky cars and solid wooden blocks painted with incredibly bright, vibrant, and heavily leaded toxic paint. And what did we do with them? We chewed on them, of course. We chipped the paint off with our teeth and inadvertently swallowed it. The sheer weight of those metal toys meant they could double as lethal weapons in a playground argument. The concept of a toy being globally recalled because of a chemical hazard was completely alien. You played with what you were given, toxins and all. 13. Beaded curtains. Why on earth did we have these? They were completely, utterly useless at keeping the heat inside a freezing English terrace house, which was their supposed purpose. Today, health and safety regulators would immediately recall them as a massive strangulation hazard for wandering toddlers. Back then, they were just incredibly annoying, noisy obstacles you had to physically karate chop your way through to get to the kitchen. They inevitably tangled into massive knots, the plastic beads would aggressively pinch your fingers, and eventually, chunks of them would snap off, leaving sad, uneven gaps in the doorway. But despite all of this, they were considered the absolute height of 70s chic. 14. Glass thermometers with real mercury. If you felt ill, your mum didn't reach for a digital, infrared forehead scanner that beeped reassuringly in 1 second. She stuck a fragile, terrifying glass tube filled with highly toxic liquid mercury firmly under your tongue and told you not to dare move a muscle. If you accidentally bit down too hard and broke it? Well, you just had to quickly spit the poison out into the bathroom sink and try not to swallow any sharp glass. If the thermometer dropped and shattered on the kitchen floor, we spent the afternoon fascinated, chasing the little silver beads of escaped mercury around the linoleum with our bare hands, an act that would require a hazardous materials team today. 15. Being locked out until dark. Finally, the ultimate illegality by modern, highly protective parenting standards, being a latchkey kid. During the long, endless summer holidays, your parents would literally lock you out of the house in the morning and explicitly tell you not to come back until the street lights flickered on. There were no mobile phones, no GPS tracking apps, and absolutely no scheduled playdates. Just total, unmonitored freedom. We drank water straight from garden hoses, built lethal jump ramps for our Raleigh choppers out of stolen scaffolding planks and loose bricks, and roamed miles from home. Today, social services would likely be called for child neglect, but for us, it was the ultimate, character-building adventure. Looking back at the killer smog, the toxic paint, the unrestrained car journeys, and the endless fire hazards, modern experts would probably say it's an absolute miracle any of us survived to adulthood. By today's strict, sterilized standards, our parents would be answering to the authorities. But for those of us who actually lived through it, that lack of regulation wasn't a constant danger, it was a profound education. We didn't have protective bubble wrap around our childhoods. We learned the hard way that fire burns, that you shouldn't run with scissors, and that you look out for your siblings because nobody else is going to step in and do it for you. We had a deep sense of community trust, resilience, and neighborly reliance that seems to have completely vanished from modern, heavily regulated Britain. It was a significantly tougher era, a dirtier era, and a colder era, but I can safely say that having lived through it, people were generally happier, kinder, and infinitely more free. We survived the Dralon sofas, the boiling chip pans, and the freezing, unheated bedrooms, but now I want to hear your personal stories. Look down this list. Which of these 15 items was the absolute most dangerous thing in your childhood home? Did your mum casually use the asbestos ironing mat? Did you ever have a chip pan catch fire on a Friday night? Or did you ever accidentally swallow the paint from a dinky toy? Let me know your absolute best memory down in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love hearing how we all survived. And if you're proud to have grown up in the 70s, hit that subscribe button for more trips down memory lane. I'll see you in the next one.